Hi guys, my name is Mayana. Today I'm going to be doing my November wrap up. In November, I read about 40 things. I read about 7 graphic novels and then 3 short stories. So I technically read about 30 books. But I just want to clarify because I know people like to argue semantics on here. So let's just get into what I read though. The first thing that I read was a book called Christmas with My Best Friend's My Christmas with My Best Friend's Brothers, and I gave this 1 out of 5 stars. So I mean, the title is self-explanatory. It's about this girl who goes to spend Christmas with her best friend at like their house that they spend years at, and she ends up running into like the brothers, and they're supposed to be childhood best friends, and the guy used to like bully them growing up, but then they kind of like left her alone once they realized that she was like hot. I really didn't like it. I thought like a lot of the stuff didn't make sense that happened in the book because they were supposed to grow up together, but some of the stuff, like the way that the character was explaining what was going on, like with the way that the character was explaining the house, like you wouldn't think that the main character was going there every year for Christmas with them. Also, like I just didn't like how like the main character is like a virgin, and the love interest, like they just kept talking about like how she's a virgin and like how innocent she is, and it's just like we are too grown for this. I'm saying there aren't adult virgins out there, but it's like I'm just so tired of this trope and authors romanticizing it. Like, where are the sluts? Like, where are the sluts? And I listened to Slayers, which I gave 5 out of 5 stars. This was so much fun. This is a Buffyverse audiobook, and all of the actors came back. Spike, Cordelia, and like some other side characters. They all came back, and it is about the new Slayer. Her name is Indira. She's black, and she is like, she grows up in this universe where she's not the only Slayer. Like there are a bunch of people who are Slayers, and something happens, and damn, I forgot what happened. Something happens, and basically, you know, Cordelia's dead in Buffyverse. So the Cordelia that shows up, she's a Slayer in her universe, and like Buffy never existed, and she was a Slayer, and so she ends up like taking Indira under her wing, and I really loved it because it was very modern. Like Indira talked about how she shipped Spuffy. I'm a Spuffy shipper, like I'm sorry, I love Spike, like that is my man. So she talks about how she ships Spuffy and how she's like always in the Reddit talking about them, and like I don't know, I just thought it was fun and it was modern, and I liked that like she wasn't the only Slayer, and so she didn't feel special, and like this was just a normal thing. And she ends up working together with Spike, and then there's also Giles, and he comes back, and it was just so fun, and I love the ending, and I love these characters together. And it kind of left off on a cliff, like it kind of left off where it could be continued, and I really hope that they do because I love this, and I hope that they put this actually in a I hope that they put this, like they make a TV show out of this, because there are rumors that there will be a TV show. So I think that this should be, because I think it was really good, and it was a nice way to bring back Cordelia, my girl. I would have loved for Buffy to be in this, but I'm actually glad that she wasn't, because it would have taken away the shine of the other characters. So I loved it. Then I read How to Fake Date a Vampire, which I gave 3 out of 5 stars. The title was self-explanatory. I read one of the other books last month. I forget which one it was, but this one was about fake dating the vampires, about this girl who she wanted to like throw this ball to impress her cousin at like this big mansion, and the vampire, he lives in this big mansion, and so they end up like sparking up this fake dating like type of situation between the two. And yeah, it's about them fake dating. I thought it was boring. I think that fake dating is just very boring right now. Nothing's unique. Ugh, it was so like, they're at the beginning of the book, literally they're talking about this vampire that she's never seen before, but he's supposedly really hot, and then she like goes to the bathroom, and like she's in the men's bathroom, and she accidentally bumps into like this really hot guy, and then she comes out, the vampire is being introduced, and guess who it is? Oh my gosh, it's the hot guy she ran into in the bathroom. Very predictable, like very just boring. So yeah, and then I got into my Star Wars era because Star Wars Phase 3 started in November, and even though I'm not on Phase 3, I was so behind. So I just caught up. I still have one more book in Phase 2 to read, and then I can move on to Phase 3. So for Phase 1 I had to read Convergence and Catalysm. I also had to read the Battle of Jediah, which was like an audible type of thing. So yeah, so I mean, this is in the Star Wars High Republic series. There are 3 different phases. Third phase is currently coming out, and I'm so happy because I thought that the phase was going to be ending this year, but it's not going to end until 2025. They stretched it out, and so I'm just so excited. I find these books so fun, even though I don't always rate them very high. I think they're very fun. I just love the Star Wars universe. I feel like there's a lot of problems in it, but they're just so much fun to read, and I just love when my favorite franchises have books, because I'm a franchise girl, but I'm also a reader. So when they have books, it just means everything to me, and I will buy them and I will read them. So yeah, so the High Republic takes place 200 years before, I don't know why I'm holding it this way, takes place 200 years before like the prequels, and this is about the High Republic and kind of their downfall. So there's 3 phases. Every phase has adult books, YA books, and middle grade books. They might not all, like all phases might not have a bunch of them. Like phase 1 had 3 each, and phase 2 has 2 each. And then I think there's 1 middle grade. To be honest, the middle grade books eat harder than the adult books to me. Like they're just so, because what I look for in like Star Wars is fun space drama, and that's what the YA books give. Like in space shooting, flying from planet to planet. Like that's what the middle grade books, well, these are a lot more serious, which they're fun too, but like not as fun. Anyways, so this one I end up giving 4 out of 5 stars, and I read this twice because I did not remember anything that happened in this book because I read it months ago. So I reread it, and then I read Catalysm, and I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars. Like I think these are fine. They're just like, I don't know, I mean, everyone loved this one. I just thought it was fine. Like I don't know what it is about me, I just thought it was fine. And then Battle of Jedi I gave 3.5 stars. And then I also read Star Wars Women of the Galaxy, and this is literally just pictures and descriptions of women. I didn't rate it because I mean technically it's kind of non-fiction, but like not really. And so yeah, it just talks about like the women in there, and I kind of just wish like and it's like in the Star Wars universe, so not just the movies, because there are so many women in the Star Wars universe, and there's so many black women in ooh, there's so many black women in the Star Wars universe, not just like in the movies, but like the books. And some of my favorite characters are black women in the Star Wars universe, but they're like in the books. And so having them all be in like one place here was just so special to me, and it was so quick. I do wish that there was, I mean, the book will tell you where the characters are from. I just wish that it would be like this character from this Star Wars media. Like I just wish it blatantly said that on the page, and they don't. We get into my nonfiction era. I read so much nonfiction this month. So I read Freedom. Okay, so the first 2 I very obviously watched Kayla's wrap up, the October wrap up, and then I read based off that. So I read Freedom is a Constant Struggle, and I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. Like Ferguson and Palestine, and about oppression and how oppression affects us all, and I thought it was really good. It does get really repetitive in the sense that it like repeats the same points over, like the same things over and over again, but other than that I thought it was fun. Also, it is like, this was written around the time Obama was president, and you can very much tell because it mentions Obama a lot. And not to get into politics, but Obama, obviously, I say that as like I'm talking about politics, but Obama isn't as praised now as he was back then, and like it mentions Obama a lot, and I think that actually is what set the book back for me, because it like praises Obama, but since becoming an adult and educating myself, like knowing, and then he's praised so much in this book, kind of just off-putting for me. But that didn't take away from my enjoyment of the book, obviously, because I still gave it 5 stars. And then I read Unlikable Female Characters, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars. I was nervous for this one because I had been wanting to read it, and then Kayla read it and she didn't love it as much as I did. But I also am I'm more of a TV person. Like I love TV, and I love unlikable characters. Like they're my faves, and I just love that, like I love the way this book was written. It talks about all types of unlikable female characters, like the bitchy ones, the funny ones, the weird ones, and it just like talked about some of my favorite characters. And I love how the author talked about characters, so even if I didn't know who the character was, I still knew where they were from, simply for the fact that she was very good at being like, this person who plays this character. And so even if I wasn't familiar with the actor, she still listed the character. And I like, even though I'm not familiar with like some even though I'm not familiar with the actors, I could be familiar with the show. Like I might not watch it, but I know what it is. And so I really love that she did that. And I just really love, like, she didn't just talk about shows, obviously she talked about movies and things like that. And it was just like pretty much everything I knew what she was talking about. Like I had watched it for myself, but rare occasion I didn't, I wasn't like falling behind. So if you really love TV, like I highly recommend this. And then I read Star Wars The High Republic Adventures Volume 1 to go into my Star Wars era. I forgot to include that earlier. I read Wannabe Reckonings of Pop Culture That Shaped Me, and I really like this one because I didn't know that the author was black going into it. Her name is Aisha Harris, so I kind of assumed, but I didn't really want to make assumptions, especially because you can't tell by her author profile, and I didn't feel like googling her. I'm so sorry. So I just picked up the book and I found out that she was black, but I really loved how this was written. It's about pop culture and how pop culture relates to her specifically, so it's more so like essays, and I just thought it was really fun. It was really good, and it's about like pop culture, like black pop culture, regular pop all unknown pop culture. But I really liked that, like when she talked about black pop culture, it didn't feel like she was explaining anything to a white audience. I know a lot of times books and TV shows blackish, they try to like talk about black pop culture, and then they'll be like, see, in black culture that means blah 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 blah. And it's like in this book, it was like you needed to know what she was either you knew what she was talking about or you didn't. And yeah, it wasn't like trying to explain it to a white audience or anything like that. And I really respected and loved that about the book, because I felt like it was written for me. A lot of the times when unfortunately when black authors write books, you can very much tell that it's for a white audience, and it just doesn't feel like it's for you, even though it's by a black author. And so I really love just feeling comfortable with this book and knowing and feeling like this book was for me. Then I read Page Boy, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars. This is by Elliot Page. This is about Elliot Page being trans, and realizing that he was trans, but also just about like his early like childhood in his life, and he didn't realize that he was trans until he was 29. And I really love that he talked about that, because some people don't like. I just love when people are not late bloomers, but they figure out themselves later in life, and I love that he talked about that. This also talks about sex a lot, so if you're someone that's uncomfortable with sex, like I would say stay away from it. Personally, I really loved it. And it talked about sex before he transitioned, which I also found very important, because I feel like that really relates to like the person that he is today. And it also talked about some of his popular like movies that he was in, like Juno, and talked about Umbrella Academy for a brief second, which I love. It's my favorite show. So I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun. Now we get into my comic book era. So I read X-Men Red Volume 1. I only read Volume 1 for like, I don't know. I read X-Men Red Volume 1. I thought this was fine. And I also read along with that X-Force Volume 1. And to be honest, I just don't really like damn, I cannot say it. I can say it in my head, but not out loud. Krakoa. Yes, that's what it is. I don't really care about the Krakoa era of X-Men. I find it very boring. Krakoa is basically this island that, or not island, is it an island or is it on Mars? I can't remember. What is one of those? And it's basically like where all mutants live, and so they can feel like safe and away from humans. And I just find it boring. I think that the best conflict between X-Men is when it's like humans versus mutants, and that's unfortunate for me. And this era has been going on for a while, so I didn't really realize that I was tired of it until I had read these, and I was like, okay, maybe I need to stay away from X-Men for a while, because like nothing really happens in these books to me. And then I read Catwoman 2018, the first book being Copycats. I thought the first book was really fun. Comic was really fun. I gave it 4 to 5 stars. This one was about how there was a bunch of copycats of like Catwoman, and like how she kept being accused, and she was just like, what the fuck? And she's like, I'm the Catwoman. And then I read volume 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. All of those I gave 3 stars. They just really, I don't know, I find that my issue with comics is a lot of them, like superhero comics, a lot of them don't have good enough plots to really hook me in personally. And then I read this Audible / Kindle Unlimited like short story thing that they have, The Far Reaches. And so Audible does this thing every now and then. They do this with like romance, sci-fi, fantasy, where they release like a bunch of like short stories and by different authors. And so I read this one. I read them every now and then. This one was sci-fi that I read. So it has How It Unfolds by James S.A. Corey. I give this 3 stars. Then it has Void by Veronica Roth. I also gave this 3 stars. And Falling Bodies by Rebecca Roanhorse, which I give 3 stars, but I really enjoyed the ending to that one. I just thought all of these books were fine. That's literally what I said. Like they're just fine. They're just different sci-fi stories. And then I read my most controversial book this month, except for Palestine. If you follow me on Twitter or TikTok, then you know the drama that surrounds this. And I'm going to take a brief moment to explain everything if you're curious. So basically, except for Palestine is, so I want to read more books about obviously Palestine. And I didn't just want to read one by just a black author. Obviously I wanted to broaden my horizons. So I read Except for Palestine because on TikTok I was looking for recommendations and everyone on TikTok kept recommending this book. So, which was my first mistake. Instead of doing my own research and finding something that suits me, I read something recommended off TikTok. And one thing about social media is that when something happens where people need to, when something political happens where people need to educate themselves, they end up all recommending the same books, and no one's really, people can get lazy, yes, and no one's really looking for their own recommendations or anything like that. And so I mean, I fell into that, and so I read it. And also I had Spotify Unlimited, so I can listen to a bunch of books for like under 15 hours for free. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to utilize that and read Except for Palestine. And the thing, this book is about politics and Palestine, but it is America-based politics and how America relates to, like, and how America affects Palestine, which that's not something I wanted. I wanted about Palestine. Like, I wanted to know about Palestine politics and Palestine itself, and this one was about the US. And I basically wrote this review, and I'm going to read my review to you. I said, I think this was a good introduction to learn about Palestine, but this is more about politics and how the US correlates than I expected. I want to know more about Palestine and the people in Palestine. This is also very complex for me personal. I'm not as smart as I think I am, and this is very academic. Not the book's flaw. I put in quotations. I mean, in parentheses. But I just want to state that for readers looking for this and to be, damn, I'm confusing myself. For readers looking for this and to be their first book, and they aren't confident in how they read and comprehend / understand / comprehend. The book title is Except for Palestine, The Limit of Progressive Politics. And so a lot of pushback that I got, so basically what happened was, I was reading someone's thread, and it was about like smut or whatever, and about this author. And under the thread, someone posted my review, but they scratched my name out, but I was like, of this book. And I don't understand how my review correlated to the topic at hand, but that's neither here nor there. And they basically were like, I don't know, I really don't get how my review related. I guess because they were trying to be like, oh, people on Book Talk, like, you know, people who read smut. But it's like, I don't read smut. And if you went through my, if you just took a second to go through my Goodreads reviews, then you wouldn't, maybe this person has like personal beef with me or something and they just wanted to set me up, I don't know. But everything that I said makes sense, you know. People kept asking me, oh, well, why did you read it if you didn't think it was about politics? I literally state in the review that I wanted to learn more about Palestine, and this was about politics and how it correlates to the US. Like, it's like people have like selected readings. I want to know about more about Palestine's politics, and this is more about politics in the US and how that correlates back to Palestine. So people weren't paying attention to like what I was saying, and like I literally admitted that like this was not a good first book to read, and that I wrote this review for people who were coming from TikTok in their review, and I was just letting them know like, hey, maybe this shouldn't be your first book that you read. I still think it's an important read and that you should read it, but maybe not as your first book. So yeah, I had to go and yeah, and I didn't rate the book, so people were like up in arms, like, I don't know, trying to like attack me, but I still don't understand what for, because I didn't rate the book. And I quoted it, and I was like, I quoted the tweet I saw, and I was like, hey, this is my review, and I explained myself, but I didn't rate the book, so I don't know why there's an issue. Like, I don't know if people don't know how to work Goodreads or what, but not rating a book doesn't affect the rating. And originally I actually did rate it. I originally rated it 3 stars, but when I look back on it, I felt uncomfortable with rating this book, so I went back and I changed the rating because I just didn't feel comfortable with rating it. So I had to explain myself a little bit because people were like getting me, and I'm like, I don't understand what the point is. Like, I don't understand what the problem is. Like I said, this book was too hard for me to comprehend. Like, okay, maybe you guys all have like, you know, complexes where you believe you're the smartest person in the world, but I think a true smart person can admit to when they don't understand something. So then I read Minor Detail, and this is about a woman who lives in Palestine, and she becomes obsessed with another woman who was brutally murdered. And so the first half is about the woman and what happened to her and how she was brutally murdered, and then the second half is about the woman who becomes obsessed with her. And she becomes obsessed with her because she feels connected to her in a sense. Like the woman was murdered, I think a few days before her birthday, so she just feels like she has an obsession, and she just feels really connected to the woman. And I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was really well written and it was very beautiful. Weird jump from that. I then read The Stone and the Star, and I gave this one 3.5 out of 5 stars. This one is about gargoyles. I had a huge fear of gargoyles when I was growing up because of that show Gargoyles. So to combat that, I decided I'm gonna read smut about it to make me feel better. I don't know. So I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. It was very corny, but I just think that monster romances are very fun. They're just so, I don't know, I like fun. Like, I just like when my shit is fun, you know? And this was fun. This gave fun. So I read it and I liked this one. And it's obviously setting up for more books, and I'll read them. You know, I'll take interest in those probably, but I just thought it was fun. And then back into my nonfiction era for Nonfiction November, I read Hey Hun, and this is about multi-level, this is called Hey Hun, Self, Sisterhood, Supremacy, and Other Lies Behind Multi-Leveling Marketing. So this is about the multi-leveling marketing schemes from a woman who was in it herself. She was in one of the highest ones. She also ended up getting cancer, and the marketing level team ended up trying to use that to also help them gain sales. And it's just about how like sick and twisted they can be. I found the beginning of the story very interesting, like how she got into it, how it affected her family and things like that. But once she started talking about like her day-to-day life in the multi-leveling marketing, I was just kind of like, okay girl, like I'm bored. And then I read The Princess Diarist, which I gave 5 out of 5 stars. This is by Carrie Fisher. This is about Star Wars specifically and her life on Star Wars, and how Harrison Ford fucked her over. Is that his name? Sorry, because I don't want to confuse him with that other guy named Harrison. Yes, Harrison Ford. Okay. Yeah, and how Harrison Ford low-key was like a piece of shit. And it's also like her diary entries. And I listened to the audiobook. So it's like she read this, and then Billy Lord, her daughter, read her diary entries, and that kind of made me cry. This book was released 1 month before her death, and I just think that Carrie Fisher's a badass bitch. Like, she is bad, okay? Like, I love that she talked about, like, in the book, how she wanted to release this book before she died, because she did not want to give anyone the chance after she died to shit on her name and like to basically lie, and like she would be obviously dead, so she couldn't defend herself. And so the fact that she wrote this book and then died a month later, that is one badass way to go out. That is one bad, like, I'm sorry, like, she's a badass bitch. And it just talks about Star Wars and being in Star Wars, and it was just really good. And I kind of need Billy Lord to write a book also, because she is a double nepotism baby, and I think she's like the perfect nepotism baby, because she is like, I loved her. I was first introduced to her in Scream Queens, and I did not know that her mom was Carrie Fisher, because I didn't get to Star Wars until last year. And I did not know that her grandma was the Debbie Reynolds, aka the grandma from Halloween Town. Like, what? Sorry, she's just, I'm obsessed with this family. And then I read The Greatest Love Story Ever Told, which I gave 5 out of 5 stars. This was by Megan Mullally and Nick Offerman. Nick Offerman, who plays Ron Swanson in Parks and Rec, and Megan Mullally, who plays in Will and Grace, which I've never watched, but she also is in Parks and Recreation. She plays one of Ron Swanson's wives, Tammy. He has married multiple women named Tammy, but this one is the most insane, and they always have like this back and forth, like, crazy relationship, and I always loved it and thought it was funny. So this is about how they met, and actually there's so much I got from this story. It's about their love story. It's about them. They talk about their shows separately a little bit. I'm a huge fan of Parks and Rec. Like, that is more so my shit. Ron Swanson is actually one of the characters that like I see myself in. There are multiple characters that I see myself in Parks and Rec. Tom, Ron Swanson, and April. Like, those are like the characters that I see myself in the most, and the characters that I love. And so I'm just absolutely obsessed. But this more so about their love story, and this just taught me so much. Like, they didn't meet until like their late 30s, early 40s. She's also a lot older than him, but because they were like in their 30s is not like weird. I think she's like almost 10 years older than him, and so because they're in their 30s, I mean in 40s, it wasn't like a weird situation. It's just like it just feels like they're soulmates, and they don't really have kids, but it just feels like they're perfect for each other, and he's obsessed with her and she's obsessed with her. I read this review and it was like, oh, the only thing that these two seem to have in common is that they're both in love with her. And I was like reading this and I was like, so okay, well, why is it so bad for a woman to be obsessed with herself? Why is it so bad for anybody? Men are allowed to be obsessed with themselves and be cocky and, you know, like all this stuff, but the moment a woman is obsessed with herself, everyone acts like it's the end of the fucking world. Megan Mullally is a fucking queen. Like, I love her down. Like, it was funny, it was cute, like, ugh, I thought this book was so good. Like, it just taught me that, like, as someone who's a hopeless romantic, it just taught me that, like, I would rather fucking wait until I was 40 to meet my soulmate, and to be with someone for the rest of my life than to keep having I haven't actually never been in a shitty relationship, but to be in a shitty relationship and keep going through that until you find your person. Like, if it takes me until I'm fucking 40, then I guess it's gonna take me until I'm 40. So I'm obsessed with me. And it's just like, I loved it because I'm obsessed with me, okay? As someone who is in love with themselves, I always say it is going to be so hard to find someone who loves me more than me. And the person who loves me is going to have to be in competition. Their biggest competition is going to be my love for me. And so just to read this book, and she's not even like, personally, I don't even think she's that obsessed with herself. Like, I just think she's confident and she knows she's a beautiful, badass woman. And he's obsessed with her. And it's like, as he should be. As he should be. And I don't know, I just loved it. I thought it was funny. I highly recommend if you love either of those shows. And then I read The Office BFFs, which I ended up giving 4 out of 5 stars. I love how this book was structured. This was about like the office and their time in the office. This was like literally behind the scenes but in the book form. It was so fun. I learned so much about the office. I personally love the office. I don't love it as much as Parks and Recs, but I personally love the office. I watched it for the first time a few years ago, and also I watched it when I was first going through a breakup, so I kind of feel like I have like this attachment to it. I also love Jim and Pam. I think they're very cute, and just talks about like the behind the scenes and things that they went through and how they became best friends. And it also has like actors from the show, and I just thought it was great. I just didn't love it as much because towards the end I ended up getting bored. But yeah, I read I'm Still Here, Black Dignity in a World Made for Whiteness, and I really loved the beginning of this book. I did have a hard time trying to figure out if this book was for me, a black reader, to like relate to like the black struggles that the author had, or if this was for a white audience to like learn about how learn how to not be racist. But then it got like really into Christianity towards the end, and as someone who has religious trauma, that part just kind of threw me off. Like, I didn't know that was in there, because if I did I wouldn't have read it. So it gets like really religious towards the end. It does talk about like, you know, Christianity and black people and things like that, and I have religious trauma, so it was kind of a jump scare. And then I read Sorry Not Sorry by Naya Rivera. This is about her growing up. She is multiracial. She is black, she is Hispanic, and then she is also white. And so she talks about how like it feels to be in a world like that how it is to be an actress in a world that deals with race, and like how because she's all three, like she could range, like, I mean, like how she's played black characters before, she's played Hispanic characters before, she's like, you know, but she never really plays like a mixed character, which I think played a mixed character, which I thought was really interesting. Santana Lopez is one of my favorite characters from Glee. Glee was one of the shows I actually watched in high school, and I heavily like found myself in Santana, and I like based my personality in high school, not like based it off of her, because I was never like a mean girl, but obviously, but you know, I really latched on to Santana Lopez. So when Naya Rivera passed away, it was like very hard for me. So I finally read this book because I've been clearly reading a lot of books from like my favorite shows. So I was like, let me read this book. She's the only character from Glee that wrote something that I give a fuck about. And so I read it, and it was fine. This book talks about, I kind of knew about some of the stuff that it talked about though. Like, they talked about her dating Big Sean. That was a huge moment for me because I loved Big Sean. I loved Glee at the time, and Naya Rivera, like, it was like worlds colliding. So it talks about Big Sean and like how he treated her, and like how he like cheated on her with Ariana Grande, who I also loved at the time. It's also shedded a light to me on how Ariana Grande kind of is not like the best person, and it's very clear, and like it's being shown time and time. love her down, but girl has a terrible track record. And then it also talks about when Corey passed away and how Big Sean wasn't really there for her. But it also talks about her boyfriend and how she met him, and this abortion that she had to have, and how she got pregnant. Well, her fiance or her husband at the time. I don't think they were married when she passed away. But this also just taught me a lot about like love, and how like she lived her life before she ended up finding the person that she thought was for her. Like she had hookups, she did whatever, like she didn't really care. And a lot of people find that important. I personally never really cared for that. Like I've always been like, I want to date this person, but it's like the way that my life works out, I would love to find my soulmate and like marry them, like date them and then get married. But it's like the way that life works out, I keep ending up with people who with guys, because I'm in my early 20s, I keep ending up with guys who necessarily don't want that. And it's like I just have to stop looking for that and just live my early 20s, which I don't really care for, to be honest. Like, I mean, if you want to do that for yourself, then that's fine. But I'm not the kind of person who, I don't know, like, if I guess I have to, so I'm fine with that. But that's not something that I look for. Like, I would love to, like, be married. Which is like, oh my gosh, that's, like, so crazy to say. Because it's like, oh, we're young. But it's like, I don't know. It's just something that I want in life. Like, I don't care if I'm young. That's something I want. But it's like, listen, I may want that, but life clearly don't want that. So I might as well, I guess I should just be young. But whatever. I ended up giving it 3 stars because it was a little... it's a little problematic. She said like the R slur. She now this is old, obviously, because she passed away a few years ago. So I tried to like give it, like, that's why I didn't give it 2 stars, because I tried to give it a lot of grace. And then she says the words like she wishes her hair was nappy, and it's like, oh, that's so politically incorrect now. And then she also said Michael Jackson. She also made a comment about someone looking like Michael Jackson pre-skin bleaching, and like, feel however you want about Michael Jackson. The topics of skin bleaching is kind of, I've always thought were distasteful, because he has vitiligo, and that really affected him, like it really affected him a lot. And I just feel that I just think it's so distasteful. I just think that the comments that she made were like very distasteful, especially of so many of them. And like I said, this is old, so it's like, but yeah, I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. And then I read The Mother of Black Hollywood and Walking in My Joy by Jennifer Lewis. The Mother of Black Hollywood I ended up giving 5 out of 5 stars, and Walking in My Joy I ended up giving 3 out of 5 stars. So this is about Jennifer Lewis and like her being like her rise to like stardom, and her being a child. And I just love that she talks about like sex in this book. I just love when people are so shameless about talking about sex, because sex is a part of life. She talks about sex in this book, and like, oh my god, this story, she was crazy. Like, there is so much stuff in this book that happens. Like, I literally was like quoting this on my private Twitter account timeline, because it was just balls to the walls and nuts. Like, she says the most insane things, and I can do nothing but respect her. Like, she was so funny. Like, it was just so funny. So it just talks about like her childhood and growing up poor, and like growing up with a lot of children, and like her being SA'd, and how her mother didn't really handle that well, and growing up with a single mom, and her getting therapy and confronting her mom and not backing down. It just was so important. And then her being a star and being a celebrity, and being like now coming into like this new money and being rich now after growing up poor, and even her being in like Blackish and like the popular things that she's been in. And one of my favorite lines in this book is when she's talking about how she got casted to play in Tina Turner's movie that was with Angela Bassett, who played Tina Turner, and how her and Angela Bassett aren't too far off in age, but she got offered to play the role of the mom. And at first she didn't want to, but then they tell her how much she would be getting paid, and she was like, verbatim, and I was like, hell, I could pay the daddy for that much. And I was just like, she is so fucking funny. Like, she's so funny, and she's so real, and I fucking love that. Walking in My Joy I ended up giving 3 out of 5 stars, because I feel like she kind of told everything that she needed to tell in the first one. So yeah, and that was the end for my non-fiction November. I had like a bunch of books up here that I wanted to get to. I just had so many books that I wanted to get to, but I needed a little break. So hopefully I keep up with non-fiction, because I had the time of my life with non-fiction November. And then I read some Christmas books. So I read Wrapped Up in You by Talia Hibbert, which I gave 3 out of 5 stars. I thought that the main love interest was really cute, and I wish that more men were like him. He was like very down bad. Oh, I forgot. Sorry, I'm so used to TikTok, I forget that I have to explain what these books are about. This book is about like the main character hates the love interest, for some fucking reason, and he is so down bad for her. Like, she kind of thinks of him as like a player, and she was married at one point, and then he was like just down bad for her, and they like kissed when she was married, even though her husband was a piece of shit, and she like feels guilty for that. So it's like them confronting their feelings on that. I just thought the book was fine. Then I have Royal Holiday, which is about this girl who goes to like you know, the royals, and she ends up falling in love with like the queen's bodyguard. This was written by Jasmine Guillory. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. I read this one because I wanted more short, I wanted Black Christmas books, and there's not a lot out, unfortunately, so I had to read with whatever I had. And even though I don't like Jasmine Guillory, I was like, well, maybe I'm too harsh on her. No, I just don't like Jasmine Guillory. Like, I just think that her books are not that great. And then I read The Appeal and The Appeal Christmas. So The Appeal, I gave 3.5 out of 5 stars. This is a mixed media book about a lot of characters, and it is a murder mystery. Someone was murdered, and this is told in forms of like emails and text messages, and I listened to the audiobook for the first half and then read it along with it, and then I dropped the audiobook at one point and then read it on its own. I thought this was really fun, but there were so many characters it sometimes got hard to keep up with. But I love that like the character who's murdered, like you reading everyone emails, but you never get the emails from the character who's murdered. You get emails to them, but you never get them from them. And then also the plot twist in the end was really good. I actually kind of picked up on some of it earlier in the book. It's just so funny because whenever I pick up on something like a plot twist, I'm always like, what if? And ... And then like when I get to the end, I'm like, oh shit, I was just like fucking around, you know? But whenever I try to figure out who did it, like actually try to figure it out, I can never figure it out. But when I'm just like, oh, what if? I always accidentally figure something out. So yeah, I thought that was really fun. And then the Christmas Appeal, oh sorry, the Appeal, they're also putting on the play. That was the point of the Appeal, is that they were putting on the play. And the Christmas Appeal is about them also putting on the play, but then a Santa shows up dead. I want to say in A Christmas Tree, but I feel like that is not correct. But yeah, Santa Claus ends up dead. So I gave that one 3 out of 5 stars. And then I read Midnight by Sean. This is the second book in Kingstown. The first book being... Fuck, I forgot the first book. But I love the first book when I read it a few summers ago. This one, I didn't... So this one is about this girl who... like... One day that she's like, there's this guy who's like trying to date her, and she's not really interested in him, so she ends up pretending to be dating this guy named Midnight, and then like they end up like hooking up, and then it follows a few years after that. And like after that hookup, I personally thought that the main character was like corny. Like when I was reading from her perspective, like her being like, I don't know, I just didn't like the way that like, I just think that it's really hard to write a badass character without them coming off as corny and being like, oh, like I can make his life a living hell if I wanted to type of character. Not that she necessarily said that, but like that's essentially like, you know what, essentially. And so I just thought it was really corny, and I didn't like how she treated the love interest, because it's like she just kept running from him, and like she would like hook up with him and then run from him and be like, oh, it was just a hookup. But it's like, okay, that was it for you. I just don't think it's fair to hook up with someone and not to consider their feelings. I also read the Twyford Code, which I should have talked about when I talked about The Appeal, but whatever. I read the Twyford Code. I gave 4 out of 5 stars. This one was told on a recording through an iPhone 4, and this is about this guy who grew up in this class for kids who were also dyslexic, and they had one teacher, and it was about like a few kids in the class, and about how he brought this book, he stole this book one day, and about how the book is actually, the teacher confiscates it because the book is banned, and it's banned for like multiple reasons, and she ends up reading the book and then going missing, and the main character gets out of jail, and he's doing his research on what happens because he loved this teacher, and also it was just really weird. And so it's about the author, about the book that was banned, was called Edith Twyford, and then he ends up finding out that there's this thing called Twyford Code, and so he thinks that in the book was actually code for something and like a mystery. And I just thought this was so fun. Like this was just flat out like just fun. Like these are the type of like this is the type of mixed media I love, like one with like hints and like mysteries and characters finding things out. Like that's what I thought was fun about the book. And then lastly, I read Evocation, which I gave 4.5 out of 5 stars. This was my most anticipated release for 2024, and I got an e-arc. I also got an e-arc for the other book by S.T. Gibson, and I ended up having a lot of fun with this one. This one is about these 3 characters. 2 of them used to date, so it's like rival, but they're also rivals, so it's rivals and lovers. And then okay, so it's about Moira, Reese, and David. Okay, Reese and David are exes, Moira and Reese are married. So but Reese and David are rivals, so it's about them having to like work with David because something is happening to him, and Moira and Reese are like the only 2 characters who can really help. But Reese and David are also like, they're in this club type of thing. It's like a frat, but for magical people, because only men are allowed in. And so like they're running to be like the head of it. They're competing against each other to be the head of it. And then also so then something happens with David and they need to work together to, you know, help him. Ever wanted as a reader is to have a black main character in a in a throuple, because a lot of them don't include black women. Like, let's be real here. Even like, I'm still waiting on my black woman reverse harem book when it's 5 stars. Okay, I'm still waiting on that. And so this book had everything I wanted. It had astrology, and the astrology was written very good. It wasn't just surface level. It had tarot cards, and it's very clear that ST Gibson does tarot cards. Like, she does this shit for real. Like, it's very clear that she does. And so yeah, that is my November wrap up. I read a lot. I had a lot to talk about. It was very fun though. I had a lot of 5-star reads, which y'all know, if you follow me for a minute, you know I do not hand out 5-star reads like that. So for me to have so many 5-star reads, it was just fun. And I had so many different eras. I had read so many different genres. Like, I just had the time of my life reading this month, and I can't wait to see where December brings me, especially because it's the end of the year. So I probably will be scrambling to read a lot of things. So yeah, thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.